Okay, here we are. Welcome back to Netroots Nation Live 2019, and I'm sitting here with congressional candidate Tom Wells, and who is running for office in the state of
in Florida, CD3.
Yay, Florida, land of sinkholes and alligators.
Yes, and of a deep blue wave.
Awesome, that works so much. We're just going to sit here and talk about stuff going on in Florida because is the district one of the districts that was affected by the incursion, the snooping around by the Russians in the party rolls?
No, not to my knowledge. No. If it were, I would know about it. I don't know which counties were engaged.
Yeah, they're being very tight-lipped about that, aren't they?
Rather.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it makes you kind of wonder, maybe it was all of them and not just a couple.
I worry more about the military incursions of America and everybody else's politics.
Well, you have to remember that as long as let's see, we have the border actually extends 100 miles inland, so the bulk of all of Florida really is can be under the control of the border of CPD.
Yes, which is pretty much a rogue agency.
At this point, yeah.
Turns out that the director of ICE, I believe today, was found to be in the Facebook group.
Yes. Oh my God, I'm shocked. I'm shocked. I tell you. Yeah.
Yes.
I read that yesterday.
Well, that's how fascism works.
Yeah.
It's a training operation. And
that's how it all works.
Moving from concentration camps to death camps at the border.
Well, yeah. I mean, let the kids die. You don't give a shit about them, you know.
I believe it is the absolute and imperative duty of our House of Representatives, if they're going to claim to be Democrat, to impeach Donald Trump. Or even
patriot in the actual term, or American in what the term should mean.
Well, 435 of them swore an oath to uphold the Constitution, which is being shredded.
The fascist party's following the lead of their leader.
It appears
because he also swore an oath to uphold.
Yes, but I am more concerned with the 240 people who claim to be Democrats. Only 80 of them have signed up for an impeachment process. Yeah. And it's not because you will succeed in getting it through the Senate and removing it from office.
And that's not important. The important is bringing it up and talking about it, and
Absolutely. If we let this president go any further,
we might not have another president because he's talking about not,
I should serve 10 or 12 years.
Well, he's been saying that he may just decide to stay even if he feels he's due an extra 2 years because of the 2 years of the investigation, and he's also saying that if he loses, he may not go out. He'll claim it. He's already in the process of casting doubt on the 2020 elections.
I know.
So he can say, "See, it was rigged. I don't have to."
And if that is not enough excuse to impeach him, then we don't have two parties. We only have one party.
But that's been the plan of the Republicans since Reagan. And I remember. I think it was on 60 Minutes when it was on back in the 70s under Reagan. There was a Republican who actually said, we want a one-party state. The nation, they also said, we don't want 18 to 21-year-olds voting.
Well, they don't want anybody who votes wrong to vote. And they have a very limited definition of that. But
that's anybody who doesn't vote for them.
Absolutely. So let us look at what the positive possibilities are. If we do impeach him, there will be a procession of his appointees who will be under oath and unwilling to take a fall for Mr. Trump. And they will be testifying to his illegality and his paucity of nature and his law-breaking. And he will bring down everyone in the House and the Senate with him, and we will take over the world. And we have to do it because the climate science is so disastrous that there is no future.
And he's sort of like 25th Amendment proofed himself because none of his cabinet members are actually confirmed. They're all acting, so they have no real authority.
I didn't realize the count was that high yet. They last about a week now.
A lot of his cabinet appointees are acting appointees because That way, number one, they'd be confirmed, but once they are confirmed, they could act under the 25th Amendment and remove him.
Yes.
But by acting, they can be fired at any time, and
Yes.
don't resign. You're fired because you're on probation.
Well, it's again not a question of getting rid of Trump. It's a question of exposing Trump.
Well, it's that whole exposure thing, but he doesn't give a shit. Because he is a theatrical type, he understands the fact there is no such thing as bad publicity, and that was proven that that was proven true with his Entertainment Tonight statement. There is no such thing as bad publicity.
Well, there is such a thing as bad publicity.
But then again, he is so acutely aware of negative framing, which is why he has everybody sign non-disclosures.
Amazing.
And he's using executive privilege as non-disclosure, as NDA. You cannot testify. You cannot talk. No, that's no. Even if you haven't witnessed anything. I'm sure Omarosa has a lot of could blow it wide open if she wanted to.
Well, I think almost anyone in the White House could blow it open because he doesn't understand the possibility of obeying a law. He has never signed a contract which he.
Of course not, because he's always gotten away with it. That's the whole thing.
Well,
and he's also from the school where everything is a positive. Even when you lose, it's a positive. They don't understand. That is why he does. We know he is internally conflicted and bothered by the negative stuff, but he never admits failure, and we don't understand that.
Oh, that's quite true. I mean, his singular talent, if it's to be called a talent, is to say exactly the opposite of the truth.
I have never declared bankruptcy. Yes, you have your casino. You may not have never declared personal bankruptcy, but your business organization has declared bankruptcy 11 times.
Yes, so he doesn't have a very good track record for success, and people have worked with him.
But he's
almost
considered
universally.
because people keep giving him money. Even before he started licensing, he doesn't need to run businesses anymore. He is the business. He licenses his name.
Oh, yes.
He's a licensing, he's a brand.
I quite agree. But we have to look behind Trump, and the people who are profiting from Trump are the people who are keeping him from deflating. So
I think at some point, if we want to go under with the prospect that he's Putin's Chihuahua.
Well, it's very interesting. I think the reason that we haven't invaded Venezuela or Iran is because Putin told him not to.
Well, I'm happy for that. And there are Russian troops in Venezuela.
Yes.
And so he's abrogated the Monroe Doctrine, because the whole Cuban Missile Crisis was about the Monroe Doctrine. We're also China. I'm seeing, as far as the world politic goes, more than the surveillance society and that 1984's world politics, where you have East Asia, Eurasia, and Oceania.
Yes, that's been used as an instruction manual, I think.
And it's not an instruction manual, because the wars are just for the sake. That's why alliances keep shifting. They don't want to win or lose. It's not about winning or losing anymore. And 1984 takes place after a nuclear war, which nobody realizes. So it is a restructured society, world society. Because in the first chapter of the book, first couple of paragraphs, they talk about the mushroom clouds.
Oh yes.
Yes. But and the first movie version actually starts with the mushroom cloud. But nobody looks at that part of the story and saying, this is the reason why the society is the way it is. Big Brother really doesn't exist except in the minds of being ratted on. The Stasi was Big Brother. They didn't need the surveillance cameras. So the cameras in the houses could be dummy cameras for all everybody knew. But what I do say has been in an instruction manual has been the 2-minute hate. When you have a Trump rally, you have a 2 minutes hate against Hillary Clinton and the Democrats and the media, because it's a catharsis that focuses the anger and frustration on the presidency, the administration, on an external force, and that's what the 2-minute hate does. It allows the outer party members to vent at a nebulous other. so they don't vent it out at the government.
I missed a great opportunity when Donald Trump announced his 2020 candidacy in Orlando. My opponent, Ted Yoho, appeared on stage with him. I should have been there and unfurled an impeached banner right then and been drug out on camera before my opponent.
Yeah.
I regret so much that I did not do that.
Yeah. Hang on. I mean, and the whole thing about the impeachment thing is that people, like the vast majority of Americans say yes, and I would think that it even includes, some of the supporters who find out that they're not better off, that they have been totally screwed over.
And they will find more of that as we do proceed through the process.
And
so when something doesn't make sense, I look at whether the motivations are properly understood.
Well, here's my issue. We protest on the weekends. We don't go protest during the work week. And I think that does a lot of damage because it means that we're really not serious about changing things because we're not in the streets. We're not taking time off from our job. Our work.
What I'm more concerned is the people in the House.
Yeah.
The leadership of the Democratic Party, they seem to be, in my mind, the defenders of the Republican Party because by not impeaching, by failure to impeach, by failure to perform to their sworn oath to defend the Constitution, then they are allowing the Republican Party to continue to exist.
And say, I think they need at least one more Republican to come out in favor of impeachment in the House before Pelosi can say okay, because it does have to be a bipartisan.
Oh, absolutely
effort.
Not.
And
Clinton
I think
was
so,
not exactly a bipartisan effort.
True, but I just think today, but you have to take a look at the times and changes and how. Yeah. Even more stratified and tribalized it's become.
We have to break that, and we have to break it now because this is the time of existential crisis.
What it is that the Republicans who privately say it has to be done have to speak publicly.
Yes.
And when you hear that Amash and other Republicans are saying, well, this is what they say in private, well, let them say it in public. Let them have the balls to say it in public.
Well, I would like all of the Democrats to join them in that. That's not a lot to ask. I know, they know, everyone knows that if the Republicans have any defect or any vulnerability in the Democratic Party that they identify, they dive into it and kick and scream and blow it up and use the dynamite. And if we're supposed to be the opposition party, we need to be the opposition party.
Yeah. And not so much loyal opposition.
Not the friendly Queen of Marksbury.
Exactly.
No, we are in a life and death struggle for our grandchildren. I am running for Congress because I have grandchildren. The way I count them, I have.
Okay, now that speak to your platform.
Well, my platform begins with strategy. The basic ideas that we need to do have been well expressed by Bernie Sanders. All that's lacking is a strategy and an opportunity. The strategy is to combine two elements that work synergistically together to change the system. Public funding of elections is available without modifying Citizens United, without modifying the Constitution or the Supreme Court. As a small thing, if we drop a money bomb in there, as Kirsten Gillibrand has proposed, of about $40 billion available for people individually to donate vouchers to candidates who take nothing except voucher money, nothing except public funding, it would be the best investment we ever made because they would then be free from call time, a few hours a day talking, begging for money.
And actually be able to do the legislative
And they would
work.
actually represent us. Now, anyone who votes for that is going to be pilloried by their former donors and never see another dollar of corporate money. They don't need it because we will put enough public money on the table. They will be attacked by primary opponents with infinite funding. But we put enough on the table to achieve media saturation. And we will have more volunteers trying to defend our children.
Yeah.
Whether it's conservative or liberal, neither party is being served. Neither ideology is being served. The only service by both parties for a long time has been the corporate masters.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, and our democratic leadership is well attuned and adapted to this legalized corruption, and they are performing brilliantly within that system. But the system is destroying the world.
Yeah.
Now, how do we pass that? How do we get people to vote for that when they're never going to get... They aren't even sure their own constituents really like them? Make your constituents like you by voting at the same time for a very aggressive single-payer health care. And the opportunity there is because the corruption in the healthcare system is so deep that we are wasting $1 trillion per year.
Well, you and I are both old enough to remember when it wasn't for profit.
Yes, 71 was the HMO Act, which was instigated by Ehrlichman. There's a telephone conversation of it, and Kaiser family.
Well, my family we were members of Kaiser Permanente's, their health plan. And it was a great health plan. It was a good health plan.
When it started, HMOs were magnificent. I had my first baby under it.
Well, we were members of Kaiser before that. They were an HMO before it was a HMO.
But
because they had a series of hospitals that that were member.
Oh yes.
And
no, it was great.
Yeah.
But every year Congress would, once the for-profit structure was created,
place,
would change the rules. It began with the doctors having absolute control of treatment of every individual patient, and it became administrators deciding who was allowed to get treatment.
Yeah.
And additional conditions and 240 variations of your health insurance plan. Oh, well, we couldn't figure out how much that was going to cost. We were wrong.
Yep. Oh, yeah. And for those of you that are too young to know about this, there was a time when healthcare was non-profit, and everybody could afford coverage.
As in all the rest of the world.
Yeah, it was non-profit, and then and it really exploded under Reagan.
Oh yes.
With a for-profit insurance company, because insurance was non-profit as well.
Well, I mean, at the time, late 70s.
Yeah.
Lobbying was a dismal operation.
Yeah, it was not a full-time job.
They had no prospects. Because you say stupid things, you need to pass this because it makes my comfort. It takes money away from the public and it gives it to my company, and that's all they can say. Now, with the Supreme Court decisions legalizing corruption, what is in every other country called bribery is now called campaign contributions.
Of course.
And there's no.
But it's always been campaign contributions. It's been for the quid pro quo.
Well, not always. The 71, the 78. Vallejo decision and the succession of events to Citizens United in 2010. It's not over. They would like to corrupt the system even further. Yeah. But the fallacy that money of speech is nowhere in the Constitution. It is made up of whole cloth play and taught by professors in chaired law school seats who were funded by the Koch brothers. It was a Lewis Powell memo conspiracy to change the world, and it has changed the world.
And not for the better.
Absolutely. Absolutely not. But we have to do this now because the science of climate
it has to. We have to,
there's no choice. So when I tell people this will happen, what I mean is that I don't believe the book ends by closing my grandchildren down.
Yeah.
And this every month for the last year, there have been new results which show that the horizon over which we will fall.
Well, apparently there's a glacier that's about the size of Florida that's about to calve off, and what that's going to, consider the size, what that's going to do to sea rise.
This week, results were in. A paper was published that the carbon absorption in the oceans of the world is going 10 times as fast as in the pre-Permian extinction. And that extinction wiped out all vertebrate species. Yeah. We're on a very short horizon to...
So the cockroaches will inherit the earth?
If they don't die also.
Well, no, they haven't actually... Cockroaches have not changed since... they're still in their prehistoric state. So they can survive everything.
Well, Venus, a couple of billion years ago, apparently was competitive with Earth in terms of livability. And they developed a little greater heat trapping ability, and it's now 800 degrees pole to pole, and When Stephen Hawking, in his birthday speech July of 3 years ago, said, if we continue the present path, we will irreversibly go to 250 degrees pole to pole with sulfuric acid rain. Well, I had actually calculated about the same thing 30 years ago. It's a simple back of it. But I hoped I was wrong. I don't think Stephen Hawking makes a whole lot of mistakes.
No, he does. No, he did not. No.
So I am living in fear, and the only thing that keeps me functioning is that I am trying as hard as I know how to create the strategy to change the environment to be part of the solution. And the smaller part of the solution I am, the happier I will be.
Yes, definitely. You have to be part of this. You have to look at the long term.
Yes.
And how it affects.
No, I disagree.
Well, no,
there is no long term unless we do it now.
You have to look at the long term to do it now, because because we are so focused on short term solutions rather than long term solutions. Well, that's what I mean. Because you're looking at it in the long term because you're doing it because of your grandchildren, and it's.
Well, my first grandchild has already graduated high school.
But it doesn't matter. Even so, you have how many grandkids?
9.5.
And how's old the youngest?
Well, the youngest is still in process.
So that's what I'm saying. You're looking at that long-term solution for your grandchild.
In truth, that's not at all the situation. In reality, I always think that I have 8 billion grandchildren because what MLK said has vastly more pertinence today than 50 years ago, that we will learn to work together as brothers or we will die together as fools. We're well down that path and accelerating. I think we need to turn the vehicle around.
Well, if you take a look at the weather patterns.
Well, the weather patterns.
I mean, I don't remember growing up, the weather patterns ever being across the country being, as wet.
Well,
as it is,
technically, the jet stream has now developed little loops, and what the loops do is to hold a weather pattern in a high pressure zone. Constant over an area which it used to move across, and there'd be a storm that went across the country. Now the storm stays in one place.
And the jet stream would affect, always affects the weather on the West Coast. Because growing up in Northern California, I remember these extremely wet winters in the Bay Area. And the El Nino effects. And I also remember the wet getting less and less and less and less and less, and how. After a certain time, it would seem like about 5 years after the wettest, it would not be as wet, and it would be even less wet, rain-wise, and then it would be like drought.
Yeah. Well, in the Himalayas, the water supply for the farming is from glacial melt, and it's been very steady for hundreds, if not a few thousand years.
And the melt's going away.
And the glaciers are retreating a mile per year.
Yeah.
Things like that, except if I'm saying a mile per year, it's probably more than that because that was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And the rapidity of the change and the fact that
but it's a hoax. Don't you know that? It's not real. Ask the president. He knows everything. That's why he doesn't listen to anybody. He knows everything. He's God Emperor. He's king of the spice, He's the Kwisatz Haderach. And, bring your dog a bone.
Yes.
This spice worm came rolling home.
What I tell people, and it is true, is that if you voted for Trump, I can understand why. You knew that things were not working. He said several good things. You discounted the horrible, horrific things that he said. And you thought, we cannot go back to the status quo. And that was correct. But we are going the opposite way.
Right, we're going... he's supported by extreme conservatives, evangelicals, and all that because he's making good on his promise to put on conservative justices that will turn America into a theocratic state.
It seems like that's the goal. I'm not sure it's working very well.
That's why they put up with all his salaciousness.
When we impeached Nixon, he started with 69% approval rating and had just won 49 states. Trump's numbers are in the tank. He has an approval of less than 40 by any measure I've seen. I don't trust polls, but I do trust my instinct that if more than half the population already wishes to have a fascist government, then it's time we try to rebel anyway. I believe that his numbers will fall and be below 20%. I believe that every
but he
Republican
doesn't accept
district
that. You know,
will
he
be.
doesn't accept polls. He doesn't believe polls.
Oh,
because
I
they
don't believe polls.
He doesn't believe that people don't like him. He believes he is beloved by everybody, and you know.
It's his own delusion, and I hope we simply allow him to keep it and reside elsewhere.
We can only hope.
So, it's interesting times.
Yes, it is.
And the best of times and the worst of times,
Yes.
as Charles Dickens said.
And I want to say thank you for sitting down and chatting with, having a wide range of, having an attention deficit conversation with me.
Well, I fit right into that. I am Tom Wells. I'm running for U.S. Congress.
District 3, Florida. And what area, what district, cities does that cover, by the way?
Well, the counties are Alachua, Putnam, Bradford, Union, Clay, and the northern half of Marion, all of the city limits of Ocala.
Okay.
So it's actually only a lightly gerrymandered district because 4 or 5 years ago, the people in Tallahassee, the Republican House, had a House gerrymander, and the Senate had a Senate gerrymander, and they couldn't agree. They couldn't even decide to flip a coin. So the publicly drawn map, which was less gerrymandered, was adapted for District 3.
Oh, that works.
It
Congratulations.
was amusing.
I bet.
Yes. No claim of ability to govern should ever be passed.
No.
Are credited from Republicans. Democrats can actually govern, but they have too much corporate susceptibility until we pass public funding. And then we can do the amazing things which seem only a dream, and we will find, because of the depth and breadth of corruption over the last 40 years of legalized corruption, that everything that we do for each other, it's both effective and cheaper than giving everything we make to the wealthy. The simplest thing that we can do to have a full employment, wealthy economy is increasing the minimum wage.
Yeah.
Like that.
Well, sadly,
instantly.
it would have been helpful if the minimum wage had increased at the same rate as everything else had increased over the decades. Yeah.
I'm not going to belay it, but
but you're right. But
if we do it now, suddenly, like we do the tax cuts and expect the trickle down, except nobody actually expects a trickle down. If we pump in the money by doubling the minimum wage in a month, then we will find an incredible surge
because
in
that
the
money
economy.
goes right back into the economy. Because you want to, you get it, you spend it.
And even the rich people will get better off. I'm not opposed to rich people.
Nope.
What I'm opposed to is their principal source of income being lobbying.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you very much,
It's been a
Tom
pleasure.
Wells, candidate for the 3rd District in Florida
Take care.
for Congress. Thank you very much.